This morning on Good Morning Anambra show, we are here to look at the long-term implications of Chinese loans. It is true that we have to borrow, but we want to know what we need to borrow for. And so I have two gentlemen in the studio to help us analyze this issue. Chukwunonso Ekesiobi is a lecturer, Economics Department, Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu University, Igbariam. You're welcome to the studio.
Good morning.
I also have Engineer Bertrand Asibe. Engineer Bertrand Asibe is a public affairs analyst. You're welcome to the studio, sir.
Thank you. Yes, you're welcome.
All right, let's run. Ekesiobi, let me begin with you. When we talk about borrowing, loans and all whatnot, what does it imply?
You started off brilliantly now by saying that no, we cannot do without borrowing now. That everybody takes loans once in a while or at a certain time, because even as individuals, you are never sufficient in terms of personal finances. Once in a while, you may have certain needs, certain emergencies, certain obligations that you may have to fulfill that will make you, seek for external assistance, either from family or friends or from institutional sources like commercial banks. So, like you rightly pointed out, countries borrow. There is no country in the world today that does not borrow. So when we discuss loans, we tend to see it as something negative sometimes or most of the times, but it's not so. There's nothing wrong with borrowing, because normally some countries can have revenue deficits. So when you have revenue deficit, you have to seek for external sources of funds to bridge that deficit, to close that gap. And borrowing from external sources, countries, international financial institutions, or development organizations are part of the ways countries raise funds outside their revenue pool to bridge these deficits whenever they arise.
Okay. Ekesiobi is of the opinion that one has to borrow when the need arises. But in the case of Nigeria, we know that we've always heard of borrowing. And permit me to say that most times, do we actually see the effects of or what the borrowing has done, or must we continue to borrow? That is the question I want to bring out. Must we as a nation, because we've been borrowing, even the last administration that left before this one, some analysts say that when they share the money amongst each individual in Nigeria, that everybody will be getting some huge amount to pay, that every Nigerian was owing as at the time the last administration left office. And this administration started off with borrowing again. So must we continue to borrow?
The idea of borrowing in economics, you borrow to solve a problem, you borrow to invest, you recoup and pay back. That is commitment. When you are borrowing, you are making a commitment. You are getting to agreement on terms. I'm giving you this amount, you pay back on an interest, giving interest. Not only paying the interest, but pay back the capital sum at a given time. You agree to that. But if you renege in any of this, it becomes a bad debt. Borrowing becomes a bad thing. And that is the case with Nigeria. Because Nigeria borrow, whether out of fun of borrowing, they hear that if you go there, get money, and you move out to go and borrow. No, in business, you borrow to grow your economics. You borrow to stimulate certain social infrastructure that will, in return, yield some dividend, create revenue, create returns, and from this return, you keep paying off the interest, and cumulatively you'll be able to pay the capital off. So what is if Nigeria doesn't have this concept, they should not go for borrowing, and that's where it is condemned. It's being condemned because we are not doing the right thing. If you want to play football, abide by the rules of the game. If you touch it with your hand, it's a foul. If you are playing a baseball, if you touch it with your leg or whatever, it's a foul. You see so if you are not ready to abide by the rule of the game, don't go in. Otherwise, you'll be committing foul. Nigeria is like they have not understood the concept of borrowing. Borrowing is beautiful, okay? If you have a business and you just need something to support you, not to get a bigger return, you go into borrowing. And because you know where you are going, you invest. It is called investment. When you borrow, you invest. It will, like he said, to bridge a gap and give you a breathing space to move ahead. Otherwise, you'll be choked.
Oh, all right, let me borrow a word from Mr. Peter Obi that I've always said that our nation needs to be a production nation. We need to move away from consumption to production. Now, all this while Nigerians have borrowed, do you think the people in positions of authority in this nation are trying to take a cue or take that word seriously? That, for instance, let's borrow and put into production that will yield dividends and then help us to pay back as and when due. Do you think so?
Our borrowing pattern has been very worrisome, especially in the last administration. If we are to, for instance, look at what we have gotten from the Chinese government or the Chinese economy, our debt increased from about $1 billion to about $4 billion within the space of, that's from 2015 to 2022. That's over 200%. Yeah, so you see that has happened. Then you now look at other economic indicators to see whether that borrowing was used to impart the quality of life of people. What has happened to the ease of doing business in Nigeria? What has happened to companies' performance in terms of what activities in our capital market? What is happening to, for instance, poverty? We became the poverty capital of the world. We have over 133 million Nigerians living in multi-dimensional poverty. So there are other issues. Okay, we've been borrowing. What has happened to the quality, the quality of our currency? What has happened to the exchange rate? Have we used these loans productively, like you mentioned, to boost the economy and also, in turn, affect the stability of our currency? What has happened to inflation? We have seen record rise in inflation from about a digit inflation rate to going to over 30% with what we just witnessed not too long ago, and prices continue to rise. So looking at these things now, you to ask yourself, what have we been borrowing for? Specifically, the Chinese loans, we are targeted towards certain infrastructure, especially in the railway sector. So you now ask yourself, those infrastructure projects that they were targeted to, number one, what is the necessity of those projects? You see projects going from Guinea to Daura, from Daura to Niger Republic. What is the economic viability? Remember, my colleague here mentioned use that money to recoup, to raise that debt, to raise revenue. What is the economic viability of taking rail projects that is leading to nowhere? Even the one that is going to Kaduna, from Abuja to Kaduna, how frequently do we use it? Because of these bandits that always hijack the trains along the way. Then minus that, even the way the ticketing service is run, we hear of ticketing racketeering when they do. So you see that most of these projects, even when we assume that they are used productively, do not give the returns that they are expected to generate to repay the cost of that borrowing. Then some other time, you see us borrowing to pay salaries. That's absurd. You should be talking about loans that should do what? To improve, for instance, infrastructure. When you provide infrastructure that will create that enabling environment, good roads, energy, that's power, telecommunications, security infrastructure. So when you borrow to fix all these things, the economy will naturally, respond to these things positively. So you are aiding economic activity, and you expect that to, feed off to the economic outcomes. So when you get these returns, then paying back will not be an issue. Sometime last year, there was this scare that Nigeria was about to default on certain Chinese loans. But thankfully, we were able to manage the situation. So how then, I don't blame the Nigerian government for the appetite for Chinese loans, because Chinese loans make about over 80% of our bilateral loans, that's from countries. So we borrow from Nigeria. Nigeria borrows from China the most among other countries in the world. And that is the same way many other sub-Saharan African countries are indebted heavily to China. That is why when China calls for an African summit, you see all our African leaders just go there like beggars, migrate, everybody moving to one country. So if we look at these things, like I said, there's nothing wrong with borrowing, but why we seem to be interested in Chinese loans the most is that, number one, the conditionalities for Chinese loans are not as stringent as you find with certain other institutions or first world countries. So, for instance, the interest in Chinese loans are very low. I think the last time I read from the debt management office was about 2.5%.
Yes, and the debt management office said that the loan from China is concessional loans. If you can highlight on that, what actually does that mean to be concessional loan?
I'm coming because of the concessional nature itself is, like he just mentioned now, it's more friendly, it's more relaxed in the sense that these conditions are more attractive than what you find elsewhere. I mentioned the low percentage rate. They have a longer tenure. Most Chinese loans, you take them for over 20 years. So over 20 years. Sometimes zero interest, but at least the interest is very minimal or marginal. Then again, you also have the aspect of the moratorium. They give you about 7 years before you start paying interest. So you have 7 years. So the aim of giving you a longer moratorium is that whatever investment you use that money for, must have started yielding returns before you start paying back. Unlike some countries where they just give you 1 year, 2 years, and you have started. So as attractive as this thing is, it is still not free money.
All right. There is this report from the Punch newspaper of 30th October, that Nigeria's debt to China has increased from $3.93 billion as of June 30, 2020 to $4.73 billion as of June 30, 2023, showing an increase of $800 million in 1 year. And now one begins to ask this question: does it mean we don't pay back when we borrow?
This is a situation that was created, like I said, because we are not playing by the rules of the game. So it will borrow. When you borrow money and misplace it, via it from the scoped project, you plan to build a football field, and you budgeted 10 million. Along the way, remember that your uncle's house, your in-law's house is leaking, and it's okay, bring out some from it. The other one, to support party patronage, you bring out some, push it there. Eventually, you have tampered with this budgeted amount for this, okay? And remember that it was scoped before the budget is made. And based on that, it will no longer cover. Then you will now be pushed to ask for more borrowing, more money. So it happens like that to virtually most of our projects. Monies are veered off their targeted budget and scope, and keeps creating multiple requests. To do, you will discover, you see them requesting loan for a particular project that was borrowed for some years past. They borrowed more. And before you go for a project, you have scoped it, then budget, this is what it will take before you go into it. But you see them still coming back for the same project, asking for extra, and so on. So it keeps going like that. And then that is why it keeps growing, because we do not invest as planned. And the interest cannot come to pay off. Once the revenue doesn't come, what will you use to pay off the interest and meet up with your bilateral agreement? Okay? So it happens like that.
All right, the program is Good Morning, Anambra, looking at the long-term implications of Chinese loans. And in the studio, I have Chukunonso Ekesiobi and Engineer Bertrand Asibe as our guests this morning. At this point, I think we'd like to take a short break. Let's feel the pulse of the masses as we bring you our street work.
Wow.
Life is a collection of moments.
This was so much fun for me. Scotch cake.
Moments so precious, they give us memories that last forever.
How can we forget?
First graduating student of the year 2019.
We did it! And of course, your big day.
We believe in celebrating all of life's special moments
I do.
because we are your spark in every milestone. San Lauren.
Anambra Broadcasting Service, ABS. With delight, we bring you the light that we bear through our illustrious leaders. Our icons. Our industrious people. Our rich culture, our places of pride, and our mouth-watering cuisine. With unbridled professionalism and renewed tenacity, we serve you real-time news, information, entertainment of varied genres with unfettered reach of your clients and customers. AB.
Wow.
Life is a collection of moments.
This was so much fun for me. Scotch cake.
Moments so precious, they give us memories that last forever.
How can we forget?
First graduating student of the year 2019.
We did it! And of course, your big day.
We believe in celebrating all of life's special moments
I do.
because we are your spark in every milestone. San Lauren.
Alrighty, welcome back to the studios. Apologies for not bringing you the street work today. Hopefully it will be here tomorrow, when we bring another topic for that. We are looking at the long-term implications of Chinese loans. Nigeria have been borrowing for some time, and, an average Nigerian knows that the government of Nigeria has been borrowing on their behalf. Now, with what I said earlier, the report from Punch newspaper of 30th October, so I don't know how huge that has been, that the increment between 30th June of 2022 to 30th June of 2023, how would you describe that and its implication to the economy of this nation? How huge is that increment and the implication to the economy of Nigeria?
Borrowing, like I mentioned, as at 2015, it was about 1.4 trillion, and by
that means we don't pay back when we borrow.
We have been increasing our loans now. We have been borrowing more under different headings. So by 2015, it got to about 4.1 trillion. I mean, $4.1 billion. Now, within the space of just 2022 to 2023, we got over 800 million of that sum. So, conspiracy theorists will tell you that money they used it for election. For instance, because what did you use that money for? It's not as if the government removed subsidy then. You now said you wanted to use it to cushion the effect of subsidy, or there was a proper project in place. This was a government that was already in transition. So taking that kind of money, what did you use it for? And when we discuss the implications of these loans, they have different, both economic and non-economic implications. One of the primary one is that of the debt sustainability. Because the more you are borrowing, the more you are putting yourself at risk for both the debt, the servicing of the debt and the repayment of the debt. And the more you are taking these loans, you are reducing your fiscal space. Your fiscal space is what you can borrow more based on your existing revenue. For instance, no bank will give you money as a civil servant without knowing your salary. So there is a threshold that you cannot exceed. Are you or any other bank?
Okay.
So
Before they give you.
Yeah. So the sustainability.
Does it mean they don't ask government officials?
They
that?
know. They know. I'm still coming. So to maneuver these things, sometimes countries now go going to securitize these loans using their national assets as securities to take more loans, because they know that if you match these loans to their revenue, they won't be able to get this loan. So some countries now go to the extent of giving up their national assets, airports, industries, national landmarks to take these loans. So, and you've been hearing of cases in some other African countries where when they default on this loan, the Chinese government will come and take over the management of that national asset to recoup their money. The same thing, some can back their loan. You can back the loan with, for instance, crude oil, and say, okay, for the next 10 years, you will take 10% of whatever we make from our crude oil sales, and it will be deducted as source. So when you are running this kind of fiscal management, you are putting yourself at risk.
And that could make Nigeria to be impoverished?
Yes, not just impoverished. You are reducing your credit rating. You know, we are rated the same way with other countries by international rating agencies, JP Morgan. You know, the other time we said our national reserve was about, our foreign reserve was about 3 billion. JP Morgan came out and said that no, instead of that 3 billion, you have already committed over 25 billion on some other obligations. So that what Nigeria actually has in a real sense, has inside that money, is just about $4 billion. So you see the risk we are going. So when your credit rating falls, it affects your ability to borrow, you know, in future. Then again, you also talk about your sovereignty. You know, there's a level you will borrow to, you become more or less dependent on that country you are borrowing, and that country can be seen to be interfering, if they like, in your own activities. Then what happens to your sovereignty? We talk about infrastructure. This infrastructure we are even talking about. Some of these infrastructure projects are conditioned in the sense that if they will tell you, okay, we'll give you this money, but if it's for railway construction, it is our construction companies that will come and execute it. What happens to Nigerian construction companies? Or don't we have engineers? Don't we have capable hands, the expertise to do that? So when you are doing it, that money is coming in and going out at the same time. Yes, because you are bringing it, the loan, but you are also using the manpower, expertise, the infrastructure, the items that you will use to execute that project. You are also using it to purchase from outside again. So that money technically is going off. So what happens? you know, it bridges something in your economic relations, so that you are more over-reliant on that kind of economy. So these things are things that people, when we discuss, people need to understand that this money is not free money. And the Chinese are very patient people. They are long-term, they are strategic in nature. So while they can give you this money and not care about the finer details on how you will go about repaying the money, you will feel that 20 years will not come, 30 years will not come.
All right, now, you know, when Nonso was actually talking about the implications, you see that the future could be bleak for a nation that continued to borrow without paying back. You know, do you see any possibility of Nigeria rising to the occasion of averting the possibility of averting what will come after the borrowing without paying? Is there anything we can do so that we can this borrowing could be reduced to the barest minimum or even stopped?
Yeah. It depends on leadership and the culture of the country. Depends on our attitude, the attitude of government towards economic values. What is our economic value? What do we place in the front burner as a trust for the nation to grow? Do we have anything to that? One concept about Chinese and this is that Chinese came into Africa to help Africa grow. They have seen the emasculation of the Europeans and the Americans on Africa. And remembering that they were once at the level of Africa, they know what Africa is passing through, that because they once passed through the same thing. Okay? But they, on their own, extricated themselves from such. Right? So they understood the economics of Africa and their challenges. But for example, about 35 countries of Africans are indebted to Chinese. What are these debts for? Infrastructural development, stimulating your economic development, both in agriculture, in industry, revamping your industries, refineries, every aspect of infrastructure development, they are there. And because they want you to grow, they give you all the enablement for you to grow. There's issues of zero interest, very low interest, or some concessions. Why Chinese participate in actual project construction? They want to save their money. They want to be sure that this construction, this money, went to where it is purposed for. And that's why they got involved. And with in collaboration with the local in-country manpower, they move ahead to do it to ensure the safety of their money. Okay? Now, they have tried all they could by doing this to secure their money. At the end of the day, when the industry starts working, they'll be recouping their money. Nigeria will have its own, for example. Chinese will have its own, and the bilateral relations become stronger and stronger. But if we didn't abide and didn't allow them to play their role, because sometimes they would sort of blackmail Chinese with these centers of debt traps, setting debt traps for African countries in order to recolonize them again. That is nonsense. That is blackmail from West world, okay, to blackmail Chinese. Chinese are very honest people. When I say, if you are ready to work, they are ready to work with you. If you are open to them, they will be open to you, and you can work. I've worked with many races of the world. Indian, I've worked with them. I work with Afghans. I work with Bulgarians, Japanese, Italians. I've worked with all of them in industries. I know their mental setting. Right? Chinese, above all, ranks the best. And that's why African countries run into them. But You see, you can't make, I don't know how to put it. If you are not ready to do a thing, you don't show interest to do it, you don't show that willpower to do it, nobody can do it for you. We must go through the process which we have signed. Economics, generating wealth, has a process. You must generate it. You must be frugal, okay, in your spending. And you must plan to save. You must be purposeful. You must be sincere. So we need all these attributes for us to be able to pay our loans. And if we fail, what will happen is, like what happened in Congo. They took over their mining. Zimbabwe, management of the railway, they are doing all this, some airports. Chinese have taken over all these things because they've seen that you cannot sustain the loan. And they'll keep running it for you until a time they have recouped what they gave you. It doesn't mean that they have taken or trapped it. It's because you failed in the terms, you reneged in the terms of economics. That is why it could be so. So if Nigeria keeps failing in paying their debt, a time will come they would invoke that contract terms and take over their investment. They're not taking over Nigeria, but they take over the investment to run it.
Maybe the collateral they gave them.
Yes.
Like you said, that some may give airports, some may give
national assets.
Some national assets to them. Okay, now there's something I would want us to bring out here. You know, any possibility of us, you know, repaying our debts as at when due now, or rather fulfilling our own part of the bargain, so that we don't see the possibility of them coming to take over any of our national assets. To forestall the occurrence, you know, occurrence of the implication that will come out from the
they are not taking over our sovereignty. No. Okay?
Okay.
It has a time.
But at least let it be that I borrowed money from you, I paid back.
Nigeria has two problems.
Okay.
A revenue problem and an expenditure problem.
Okay.
The revenue problem, our sources, at least let us start with the one that we have been over-reliant on for a very long time, that is crude oil. You know that the kind of massive crude oil theft that is going on in this country, our country that is supposed to be $1.9 million barrels per day of crude oil generation and sales, we barely meet up to a million barrels per day. So we are not getting what, you know, more than 50% of what is supposed to come into our national coffers is going into private pockets. So they need to go and rescue those monies back to our national pocket first. Then, yes, then we will now know how that, this is the first place to start. Then the second one is to make your economy viable. So people can, that's what I'm saying, that you don't, this thing they are traveling up and down, telling people come and invest in Nigeria. If the Nigerian economy is doing well, you don't need to tell people to come and invest. People will naturally, people will naturally gravitate towards that place that they feel. Investment goes to where it is welcome. It's not just by mere words. It's by when you go there. Look at the way Nigerians are living the country, for instance. Is anybody coming here to tell them to come? We know why we are going there. So the same way investment goes, all these things we are traveling about, we are just deceiving ourselves. Try and make the economy conducive. Yes, try and make the economy conducive for investment, security, address it, domestic economic problems, exchange rate instability, inflation, rising inflation, the problem of unemployment, all those things that, you know, the macroeconomic indicators that are not favoring their country now, that are affecting businesses, multiple taxation, all this other stuff. So they need to fix the economy first before you allow it, before people start coming in. Then you diversify the economy. You know, every government that wants to come in has this idea of how we come and diversify. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to, you know, walk the talk. Diversify the economy, open up the economy, break down monopolies, remove government bureaucracies, inefficiencies wherever they are. And you see this economy will on its own move. You don't need to tell people to come in. That's on the revenue side. The expenditure side, we are not spending money like we were discussing of air before the program started. We are not spending money like people that are borrowing money. We are spending money like rich kids, like our father is Bill Gates. There's where this money is coming from. Look at the uproar that just happened not too long ago. You are going to borrow money. You now want to buy a Jeep, SUVs, 160 million and the rest of them. You want to buy a yacht. And this is the kind of things that we should be thinking of in a country that cannot provide 24 hours electricity, that we are still having challenges, basic challenges of healthcare, education. You cannot pay their workers. And you see people winning elections with massive numbers in states where they have not paid their workers for months. Some running into, yes, some of these states that had the election. You see people winning, winning, claiming to win, when the situation in that place has not been favorable. So is it that there's something wrong with us or there's something wrong with the system? So our expenditure habit, we have to cut the cost of governance. We keep saying it, cut the cost of governance. How? All this wasteful spending, we cut it off. Look at, there's this Onosanya report that they had not so long ago. I think it's under the Jonathan government, where they make the recommendations on how to cut down the cost of governance. For instance, the number of appointees, the margin or outright removal of certain parastatals. Like, I think in that report, for instance, they suggested that we merge EFCC and IPCPC together to cut the cost of this thing. Then why do you have road safety and all these other things? That normally you just have the police. Then in the police, you have the traffic police, you have this police, you have that police. So why are you duplicating?
Like it used to be.
Yeah, why are you duplicating all these things? That these things are just avenues they use to siphon public funds. So our expenditure habits, how is our procurement process in this country? Yeah, so I don't know who mentioned it just now. You will budget for a particular project. Some years down the line, another government will come in and budget for the same project again. So who are we deceiving? So if we cut down these costs, this frivolous expenditure, you won't have need to be borrowing for necessary things. So
and when you borrow strictly for
yes.
the purpose. Okay. Yeah. Before we wrap up, what's your last message?
Well, my last message to this country is they should cut down their tendency to consume, spend money. One. Second, they should think of banning any item that we can rightly produce here in the country. We don't need alternative. Because by banning all these things, it will reduce the demand for dollar. And by the time we start producing our own and exporting it, we start bringing in dollar. And then that is the only way our Naira can appreciate, not by any banking manipulation. It's by production and exportation.
Yes.
Full stop.
All right, the program has been the long-term implications of Chinese loans. From my analysts this morning, actually, there are implications, especially when we keep borrowing and not paying back, and of course, not using it for the grand purpose of which it was borrowed. I would like to appreciate you so much, Nonso Ekesiobi, for being here this morning.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right, thank you so much, Bertrand Asibe, for your time this morning.
My pleasure.
All right, and that's how it's been. My name is Nonye Wokwe. Let's do this again tomorrow. It's a goodbye from here.
Thank you.